Hey, 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 this is Reverend Erin-Ashley, founder of spiritualmechanic.com. And in this video, in this live training, I'm going to be talking about how to build your confidence as a spiritual practitioner. And I asked for some questions yesterday. I dropped the link for questions in a couple groups. And so today I'm just going to go over, I'm going to answer some of those questions, and I'm also going to share some of the best things that you can do if you're called to be a spiritual practitioner so that you can reach the people who you're called to reach, and you can feel good and solid in your own well-being as you do it. Okay, so if you're not already on the email list, I highly recommend it. I try to announce when I'm going to be doing these Facebook Lives ahead of time. You can do that at spiritualmechanic.com and sign up for updates. Okay, so I'm going to go over what we're going to talk about, then we're going to talk about it, and then I'll try to do a Q&A at the end. I had some questions beforehand, so we'll just see where we are time-wise. The first thing we're going to talk about is why we as sensitives and spiritual practitioners tend to struggle with confidence. There's actually a very good reason for it, and knowing it will likely help you feel more comfortable and a little bit less self-judgmental. The second thing we're going to talk about is how to develop confidence through the 4 phases of going pro. We'll overview the 4 phases of going pro, as well as the confidence things that you want to focus on for each one. And then we're going to talk about my inner steel technique. This is a technique that I developed specifically for empaths and highly sensitive people. It's a very good, high-quality technique. It is the best for empaths and those who are emotionally sensitive. And then I'm going to do some Q&A. I've got about half a dozen questions that I got before we started this live, and I've got my notes here, so I'm going to refer to them a few times as we go. Okay, so first things first, why we tend to struggle with confidence as practitioners and sensitives. So first off, as highly sensitive people, we are designed to be, wait for it, highly sensitive. Yay! So that means we live in a more reactive body. The physical body is the thing that is reacting. One of the things that I really urge my clients to keep in mind is that we are spiritual beings living in a meat suit. And the type of meat suit that you are living in has a huge impact in how you feel day to day. If you live in a really sensitive meat suit, it is going to be prone to anxiety. It's going to be prone to stress. It's going to be prone to autoimmune disorders. And none of those necessarily mean that you're doing something wrong. All that means is that you live in a sensitive body. And I need to cough, so I'm going to go off screen to do that. Give me 1 second. Okay, excuse me. Sorry about that. A little bit awkward. We're going to keep going. Okay, so I hope that you can hear and you can fully receive that living in a sensitive body is a part of your natural gift. And as you learn to work with the physical body in a space of honoring yourself, honoring the body you live in, as well as the gifts that it has, especially if you're called to be a spiritual practitioner, you really want to honor that your physical body is sensitive, and that's why you have these spiritual gifts that you have. But it also means there's some specific things you want to do in order to maintain confidence in the physical body. You're going to want to watch your posture, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the inner steel technique. Now, before we get to the inner steel technique, I do want to talk about developing confidence in the 4 phases of going pro. So a quick overview, the 4 phases of going pro. Phase number 1 is the phase of, dun, 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 dun. It's about working on your fundamentals. I have to look at my notes. I swear I've taught this like a dozen times in the past week. But anyway, so it's your fundamentals. So this is where you as a practitioner are exploring which modalities you're called to work with, whether it's Reiki, whether it is talking to spirit guides, whether it's something else entirely. This is when you're doing that work. The second, and when you're in phase 1, when you're working on the fundamentals, the number one thing you want to focus on is trusting yourself as best you can, taking baby steps, and trusting the universe, right? So this is a dialogue. You do not need a lot of confidence in this phase. This is usually when we are slowly starting to build that confidence, when we're slowly starting to realize, oh, we can trust the universe. Oh, okay, it is safe for me to trust myself. That's usually where we're at in the foundations phase. And so you really want to be gentle with yourself, bring in a lot of self-compassion, kind of treat yourself like a child that you're mothering or nurturing, and make sure that you're giving yourself nourishing words as you learn to trust yourself and trusting the universe. So it might sound like this. Okay, I know it's really scary to go to your first Reiki attunement, and it's okay to feel a little nervous about this. So go ahead and just show up and do your best. It's all going to work out fine, right? So that's the kind of self-talk that you want to encourage for yourself. And you really want to validate your own feelings as you go. You want to avoid the trap of thinking that because you're called to a spiritual path, that you're only supposed to have a limited amount of emotions. As a highly sensitive person, you're going to have the whole range, and you're likely going to experience the full range rather strongly. So whenever you're upset, you might feel very upset. When you're nervous, you might feel very nervous. Whenever you're joyous, you might feel very joyous. It's part of the gift of sensitivity. And so you really want to make sure that you're honoring the fact that it really is a gift to have the full range of human emotions. Okay, so phase 2 is all about setting up your tech. So if you know you're going pro and you're going to do this online, then you want to make sure you have systems and technology that support you. Now, almost always the thing that gets people stuck in this phase is tech phobia, right? So all of these thoughts and beliefs come up about how they can't do it. And usually it's very tech specific. It's like, oh no, I can't figure out this tech. I'm a spiritual person. This is left brain thinking. I can't do that. And so you really want to use logic to help kind of negate those beliefs that aren't really helpful. So for instance, this is going to look like, I wrote a couple of the beliefs down that you can replace. So I'm just going to read them off my paper. You can say things to yourself like, lots of people have set up this technology before, so I can do it too. There are lots of tutorials online. I'm sure I can find out exactly what I need to know. I only need one system that works, so it's okay to not get it perfectly right away. It's okay to test it and try. Failing doesn't mean anything, right? So you really want to give yourself, first off, you want to continue the process of being kind and compassionate that we talked about before. And you also want to use appropriate and helpful beliefs as you move through that phase. The third phase is whenever you start getting your practice sessions, right? And if you're doing your practice sessions, part of that is about working with and receiving testimonials, right? So hopefully if you attended How to Go Pro as a Psychic or Energy Healer last week, then you hopefully already know all about practicing, and that setting up your technology makes it super easy breezy to get lots of testimonials and healthy, wonderful feedback. Now, as soon as you start practicing and doing readings in exchange for feedback, you really want to make sure that you are, number one, stockpiling your testimonials. You'll start to get some positive feedback right away. I recommend starting a feedback file where you put the positive feedback that people have said that you can read if you have a bad session, if you're having a bad day, or if you're just feeling a little bit off. If someone says something mean to you, you can pull that right out and you can read the positive things that people have said about your work. And this is a good practice for everyone who goes into this work. This work is still not 100% mainstream. There are going to be people who doubt what we do. Some of these people are not going to be very nice about it. And so you really want to have a really high quality file where you have positive feedback from people, the kind things people have said, so you can read it and remember the impact of what you're called to do. And by the way, if you're feeling like a fraud at any point, this is a good thing to whip out too, because you really want to go through and absorb the positive words that other people are saying. It really helps with that voice that you're a fraud whenever someone says, wow, I can't believe how much better I feel. I've tried 16 therapists and you did it in 15 minutes and I feel better than I've ever done. That's hard to argue with, right? And so you really want to keep that file on hand. Okay, the fourth phase is whenever you're finally charging for your sessions, whether it's readings, energy healings, or something different. And so one thing that you really want to do is you want to keep those testimonials on hand still, right? Because as soon as you start charging, it tends to bring up some anxiety. It tends to bring up some insecurities. It helps you to feel like a fraud if you're new to charging. And so you really want to keep those testimonials close by to build up your confidence and remind yourself of what you're doing and why. The second thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have a daily practice of building your confidence, of releasing any limiting beliefs that you have going on. Now I'm about to show you the inner steel technique. I'm going to share it with you. There's a link somewhere. I think whenever I'm live, it is below me, but I wouldn't swear to it. I have no idea where it is. But you really want to honor whatever you're called to do to clear your old limiting beliefs. You can use EFT, you can use the inner steel technique, which we will review in a minute. You can use your own energy clearing. You can use NLP if you're called to. It really doesn't matter which modality you choose. It only matters that you honor whatever you feel called to. Okay, so I'm gonna share the inner steel technique. I'm gonna do a real quick check and see if I can't figure out where I am broadcasting live and whether you have had questions so far. So let me go ahead and get to my business page. Okay, I am live. Yay, that's what I like to see. Okay, so let me see if I can do this without accidentally broadcasting myself twice. Wish me luck, people. Okay. Go to see if I can get to the questions. That's all I'm trying to do here. Oh, good. Hi, Christina. Okay, I see you. That's great. All right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the inner steel technique. I don't see any questions here. And I will go ahead and share this video later. So it looks like it's broadcasting appropriately. That's what we like. 2 thumbs up. Okay, so the inner steel technique. I do have the link. It should be somewhere here. And it's the inner steel technique download. If it's not showing up, you can go ahead and let me know in the comments. After this broadcast closes, I'll make sure that the link is in the comments as well. Okay. So the inner steel technique is something that I created, and I created it in 2013, I believe. And I was working with a lot of empaths that year. And what I noticed is that a whole bunch of empaths had the same story. They would all tell me that they were struggling with their confidence, that they couldn't go anywhere without feeling inundated with energies, and that they had a really hard time feeling empowered in any situation. And so the number one thing that I wanted to do with the inner steel technique is I wanted to help people shift that energy so that as an empath, as a highly sensitive person, they could experience confidence and peace and calmness as their main modalities. I wanted the main emotions to be that well of peace that we have access to as highly sensitive people. And so the inner steel technique was born. And this technique encompasses 3 levels, right? So this is mental, emotional, and physical. And so this is a technique that allows you, number one, and most importantly, if you remember at the beginning, if you saw at the beginning of the broadcast, I talked about how we are in sensitive bodies. Now, part of living in a sensitive body that's a bit reactive is you really want to start to teach the body that it is actually safe exactly as it is. And so part of that process is going to be about allowing yourself to hold the body in a confident position. So the number one pose that is usually the easiest for people to do is the Wonder Woman pose. And again, you can download the PDF. It's perfectly free. There's no opt-in. Go ahead and print it off and turn it into your new best friend because you'll want to start honoring the different postures that help you feel confident. And I'm going to show you. Your shoulders should be relaxed back and down, right? Your chin should be up. That throat area should be open. And you should not be touching the belly area or the neck. And that's because you have nerves in the belly and the neck, and it is a closed off stance, but you're telling the body, the physical body, whenever you touch the neck a lot, or whenever you touch the stomach a lot, is that the body is not safe. And then the body reacts in kind. It makes sure to stay on slightly higher alert. It likes to get a little bit more anxious because it assumes that there's a threat somewhere that it needs to watch out for. So part of our job as the spirit that lives in the body is to hold the body in a confident position. Now with the inner steel technique, we pair confident posture with meditative breathing with a goal or an insecurity that we'd like to either charge or remove. So if you're using a goal, this is something you're going to supercharge, going to be calling in the supportive energies to you. If it is an insecurity that you're releasing, then what you're doing is you're teaching the body that even when it has this insecurity, it is still safe. And so you really want to honor what you are experiencing. You don't want to deny any emotions. You don't want to stuff them down, but you do want to create space for all of those emotions to come up so they can be released and healed. And remember, whenever you have an insecurity, it's kind of like a little bubble or a ball, right? And it kind of wants to float up and release. That's its natural state. That's what it naturally wants to do. And so if you expand your energy so that you have enough space to do that, and I'm talking about physical expansion. Again, notice my shoulders relax back and down. Then what happens is it's hard for that energy to get stuck in the energy system. So even if an insecurity bubbles up, it's just going to release. It's going to float away, and it's going to be wonderful. So the inner steel technique shows you exactly how to do that, and I highly recommend that you incorporate it into your practice. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page and see if there are any questions about this. I'm going to go ahead and actually look at my second screen. I have two screens here, and I'm going to see if I can't find this way. That way I can get the questions up without me getting stuck. I don't want it to accidentally play on this computer, the one that I'm broadcasting from. Okay, and then I'm going to answer some questions. So I will answer the questions I got ahead of time, and if you have questions that's been on your mind as I've been doing this broadcast, then I would love it if you would go ahead and put them in the comments section, and I will answer them as best I can as we go. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get this to come up. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so I don't see any questions yet, and I'm going to turn off the volume on my headset that way. Okay, all right, so let's see here. We've talked about the inner steel technique, and I am going to go ahead and answer some questions now that I got before the broadcast. So I got a question from Christina. I don't know if you're still here, Christina, but hi if you are. And she asked, how about techniques for when you feel like you've lost your mojo, your spiritual mojo, and your confidence? And so what you want to do is, if you're feeling like you've lost your spiritual mojo or your spiritual confidence, then you want to keep a couple things in mind. First off, you want to keep in mind that we all go through phases where we feel more or less confident, where we feel more or less connected to spirituality and divinity. It's been called the dark night of the soul whenever we feel called to do this work, or just whenever we're on a spiritual path. And then bam, all of a sudden we can't connect and it seems like everything's going wrong, even though we feel as though we have done everything right and we've honored the path. And that's completely normal. And so you want to remind yourself that it is normal to experience that. And it is a normal part of life. And so you don't want to attach any unnecessary meanings to it. Sometimes I'll see practitioners come to me and they've internalized those meanings. Like they'll take it to heart that it means something about what they have or have not done right in their past, whenever they could be doing everything perfectly. And this is a normal part of the process. The other thing that you want to do is you want to take excellent physical care of yourself. You want to make sure that you are eating foods that nourish and support your body. You're getting enough sleep. Stress and all of these things can erode our ability to connect appropriately to our guides or any other sense of spirituality. And you also want to make sure that you honor the physical realm. And then on top of that, please do, if you need it, reach out for support from friends and those who are close to you. This is a great time to call in support. If you are having trouble getting support from the other side, you want to make sure to call in extra support on the physical side. Make sure you're developing community. Make sure you have relationships and people that you can reach out to. And if you're in a good space right now where you have that already, as far as the spiritual connection, you have a strong spiritual connection, it's still wise to have really strong physical relationships and human relationships, because it's just wonderful to be supported. And I'll be talking about that through some of the other questions I have as well. Okay, and then Deb said, I get stopped or stuck when people, especially those close to me, tell me that my spiritual work is all BS. I can lose all of my confidence at that moment. It tips me right off center and into reaction and self-doubt. So first, Deb, I get it. I've been there. And there are two things I recommend. If you're a spiritual practitioner and you're already doing your practice sessions, make sure you are saving your testimonials in a separate file. This is the first thing you want to review whenever someone says something kind of mean or nasty. You want to go ahead and pull it out, read all the people whose lives you've touched. You want to meditate on the fact that you have changed people's lives and you have the proof to back it up. The second thing is you want to make sure you have really solid friendships and community with people who are on the same path as you. And this is important for several reasons. Number one, you do not want to do this path alone, right? It's really important that you take the time to develop the relationships with people who are on a similar path. Even if it's not exactly the same, they can be doing something slightly different. But because it is not mainstream, you really want to honor that community as best you can. And then the third thing I'd recommend you do is the inner steel technique, right? Because that's going to help you just release all of that. And it's a really fast way. It takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes is all you need to release that and feel really good again. Okay, next question. Lorna says, while going along my spiritual path of learning and also being an empath, so super sensitive, is there a quick way of shielding myself as I work? I'm feeling exposed and unprotected, and then I start to worry that my spiritual work may end up leaving me feeling icky, and then I struggle to concentrate. So Lorna, if you're not already a part of the Empath Mechanics course, I would definitely recommend that you check that out. You can get that on the website, spiritualmechanic.com, and then you can go to the classes button and you'll see that in the queue. You'll see that on the classes page. And so first off, I highly recommend that course if that's calling to you. And the second thing that I really recommend is working with the inner steel technique or any other technique that feels similar to you daily. And the inner steel technique is designed for people who are in the profession, as well as just an empath and super sensitive, and they want to feel sensitive and strong. And so I really honor the fact that you're doing this work as an empath. And I highly recommend that you use this, because part of what happens is as you learn to stay in a confident way of being, and you're holding your body in a confident posture most of the time, then what happens is the body learns over time that it is safer to feel confident. And even if someone has negative feelings around you, or if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by what is coming up, you really want to be able to release that. And if you're in the confident mode most of the time, you're going to feel more at ease. Okay. Okay, good, Debbie. I'm glad that that helped. Wonderful. Okay, great. So let me know if that helped, Lorna, if you're here live. And if not, I'm sure I'll see you in the comments in the replay. And then Tracy asks, I know that confidence comes from practice, courage, and steps as we do our work. But are there any little practices that you might suggest that will support us as we grow in confidence? I've mentioned a lot of them here, Tracy. And again, I'm going to preach about the inner steel technique. It's a really good technique. And again, you can use anything else that you find, like tapping or a daily energy clearing that supports you. But again, the inner steel technique works for about 99% of people. And so I highly recommend you try it. That's higher than most of the others, right? So most things only work for some subset of the population, but the inner steel technique works with 99% of people, especially empaths and highly sensitive folks. Dina says, how to not feel like a fraud. This is where you want your testimonials. If you're starting to feel like a fraud, those testimonials are going to be your best friend, and it will really help you remember how you impact others. So you really want to keep those on hand and definitely look at them anytime you need to. Cynthia asked, and this is a really good question. So for those of you who are already professional or about to be a professional, this question is for you. So Cynthia says, when you are reading for someone you know, how do you distinguish between what you know and what you know, right? So what do you know intuitively and is coming from the guides versus what you know as someone who's watched them on their path? And so there are a couple of things that I recommend here. First off, I recommend that you recognize that some people who are professionals, who are very seasoned professionals, will not read for their friends simply because they don't want to have to deal with this, right? So recognize that this is difficult and that is perfectly normal. And you don't necessarily have to read for your friends, and you can choose not to. That being said, whenever I do readings for people who I consider friends, I'm always double checking with the guides. So this means if I am asking, is this relationship best for them? And I personally, EA, I have opinions about this relationship because I've watched them in this relationship. Then if the guides seem to confirm any of my opinions, then I will double check. I will just ask again, I'm like, okay, guides, this is what I got. I think that's the same thing that I believe, but I really want to make sure that I am translating this appropriately so I can really help my friend. So I'll just ask for clarification and I double and triple check. And once I feel like I've gotten as affirmative as I possibly can from the guides, then I communicate that information to my friend and sitter, right? And by the way, if you're new to this, a sitter is the person that you're reading for. Okay. Let me see if I have anything else in my notes for you, Cynthia. Okay. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to say is that this does get easier with practice. So Cynthia, if you decide to read for your friends, that's wonderful. You can absolutely do that. Just know that sometimes there will be a little bit of practice involved to kind of figure out where it's you versus the guides. And remember to just keep asking, and it does get easier with practice. Okay, so if you have any questions that I haven't answered so far, go ahead and drop them in the box. And I will go ahead and tell you a little bit about the Pro Psychic Mechanics online course and give you a chance to put your question down if you have it. And so let me go ahead and refresh my page to see if we have any questions. And so the Pro Psychic Mechanics online course, a lot of you probably are familiar with it already. I reopened the doors for it. And so this is my course that teaches you how to go from insecure newbie to getting your first paying client. If you're already professional and you're struggling to get a lot of sales, this is probably a bit too elementary for you. But if you haven't gotten a lot of paying clients, if you only had 2 to 5 paying clients, a small number, then you definitely could benefit from this course. So I teach you step by step the 13 steps that you need to take in order to go from insecure newbie through the foundations phase that we already talked about, all the way to sending an email in order to get your very first paying clients. So if this sounds like something that you want to join or learn more about, you can find it at spiritualmechanic.com/ppm. spiritualmechanic.com/ppm. All right, and I'm going to put that in the, it's going to be loud typing. So hold on just a second. Take off this. Okay, so I'm going to check to see if we have any questions. Well, my comment showed up just fine. Okay, and so I will go ahead and let you go for now. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment box. I know a lot of you are listening to the replay. I'll revisit this as I can. So have a beautiful day, and thank you so much for showing up.